All right, so assuming all of your data has been uploaded and posted to CalPAS, all of the submission errors have been cleared, and so you're now ready to look at your certification details section, and turns out you have some cert errors or there are some discrepancies on the reports, and so this certification process would help you, would guide you on some steps you could use to be able um, to go through the process without any hiccups. Okay, so certification process. So since the post redesign, there um, we want to emphasize a greater, more holistic approach to the certification process. Okay, so again, you've submitted your files, you've corrected those errors were corrected, you've resubmitted your Fall 2 files, and now they are stored on the CalPAS ODS, in the CalPAS ODS. And so once those data are stored in the ODS, it's now the reports are generated. And then, of course, new this year is the identification of some data discrepancy errors. So these are your errors this is another layer of errors based on your ODS files that didn't trigger initially during the IVR. And so if you continue ignoring the fatal errors on the data discrepancy section, it then manifests as CDDs, or your certification data discrepancy errors that generate on top of your CERT errors in CalPADS. And so it is important that you look at your DDs as well as prior to looking at your certification page. Okay, we will get to the DD in just a minute. So once you've corrected all of the DDs and reviewed your reports, and now you then end up correcting CDDs and cert errors and any report discrepancies. Once those reports are corrected, or errors are corrected, and you've ascertained that the errors are cleared as reflected by the fall to zero fatal errors, and of course your reports are accurate, then you do your LEA approval or certification. As you've noticed, there is only one layer of certification, and so it's a two-edged sword, right? On one hand, you have full control of when you certify. On the other hand, if you have bad data, then you have full responsibility in resolving those errors, right? And sometimes it then delays your certification, and you don't want to do that later in the process because it will hold you back and prevent you from certifying. You don't want to be resolving hundreds of SCSE0139s or cert errors that could have been resolved earlier in the process. Because if you do that, you will get a lovely email from your CSIS monitors like Nate asking you why you didn't make the deadline, right? Or why are you resolving? How come you still have 100 errors into the deadline week? Okay, so let's go to the certification page and let me demo the page for you guys. So, oh, not this. Let's go to staging. Okay. All right. So in CalPADS, once you've submitted all of your data and resolved your errors in the IVR, you go to the certification page and look at your Fall 2 certification status. So by clicking on this, it then is your status. And so the certification details page are divided in multiple sections. Let me just zoom this in 125. So you have here your summary, and then you have your list of certification errors. You have your list of fatal errors as well as your warnings. And then, of course, you have your certification reports that you are required to review after you've cleared all of your cert errors. And then you have your snapshot history here. So as a reminder, um, you have your cert errors, and you also have the revision status toggle here. This is important. If let's say you've already LA approved and you didn't want to um, and you want to stay LA approved while correcting some errors, um, always toggle between the revision statuses to be able to see if you have fatal errors on your revised uncertified version, okay, or if you've cleared those errors. Okay, so the errors, the certification detail provides you the create date, the CDD run and begin date. So this is essential when you have CDDs that you need to clear, and if you still have CDDs, and then of course you have your validation errors. Okay, you have your combination of CERT errors and your CDDs. So you have here your CERT errors. So let's discuss some of the common errors that you will encounter for Fall 2. So number one, the common error that we normally get is your CERT084s. These are your staff who do not have staff assignments reported for them. Normally, these are your staff who may already have retired and you just haven't reported their exit properly, or you may have failed to submit their staff assignments. So to resolve the error, of course, we need to know what the error is, right? So you can click on the CERT084 error here, and it brings you to the user manual version of the CalPADS error list. Okay, so states here that again you have a a staff member who do not have an assignment, however they have an active staff demographic record. Okay, so let's look at one scenario where this applies to. So let's look at seed number staff. So one of those staff members is this person here. So essentially, this person does not have a staff assignment this year. They have a demographic record. Okay. However, they have an active demographic record this year, but no staff assignment this year. So that's why the CERT084 triggers. So the question is, number one, is the staff member still active this year? Okay. Have they did they retire or did they leave your district? And so it turns out this staff member indeed left the district last June 30, 2023. However, for some reason, there is a new record generated in CalPAS that made this an active record. And so why is that? The reason is because when you sometimes when you submit a staff demographic record with an update, you also include the record effective end date, which essentially tells CalPAS that to trigger a new staff demographic record for the staff member. Okay, so how do you report staff members who exited your LEA? You only have to submit when you report their employment end date. Only populate this field here, the employment end date. Do not populate the record effective end date. Never populate this. Because if you do so, it will only generate a new demographic record in CalPAS, and it will, of course, put you in an endless loop of CERT084 errors. So when you submit, when you tell us that your staff member is no longer employed, only populate the employment end date, never the record effective end date. Okay, so if you clear this and then post, then CalPADS will then hopefully clear the remaining 814 error that was generated um, because of that record effective end date. Okay, the record effective end date is in the demographic record here. It's in your SDM file. Yeah, it could be because maybe in your SIS you've populated the record effective end date, or maybe while you were manually updating the record in CalPADS, you added the record effective end date as well. Okay, that's what normally triggers your CERT084. Now the next error is CERT048. CERT 48 is stating that, hey, you have a staff member who is active this year, who you assigned a staff assignment. However, we don't see a non-classroom job classification code or a course assigned to the to the staff member. This normally happens for teachers who you report with an assignment at a site, but there are no courses in CalPADS associated to that. So you have here the staff member is assigned this year in both Emerson Elementary and at the district. However, upon scanning your the courses assigned to them this year, the staff member only has courses assigned at um, Emerson Elementary. So to resolve that, you have to ask two questions. Okay, number one, is the teacher teaching an actual class, or is the teacher not teaching a class but assigned a non-classroom role? So, so if the teacher is not assigned a classroom role, then the correct way to report the teacher is assigning them to a non-classroom job assignment code. So, you just submit a new SASS file with all of the staff members' assignments included, of course, if you're doing a batch file, and make sure that you have the non-classroom based assignment code included or reported. Okay, now if you just want to manually correct the error in CalPADS, open the record and just add the non-classroom based assignment for the staff member. Okay, now if the staff member is actually assigned to a specific class at the district, then you have to, of course, submit a course enrollment record or CRSE and assign the seed of that teacher to that class. Okay, that's CERT 48. Now, CERT 47 is the opposite. Okay, let's go back to the explanation here. CERT 47 is essentially stating that, hey, you have the seed of a teacher is assigned to a course. However, we don't see the assignment of that teacher to the school at the school that the course is being taught. Okay, so to resolve that, of course, we go to the CERT 47 teacher, CERT 47 error. Let's go back here. Let me just, I don't want to so when resolving CERT 47, look at the assignments, look at the courses. Okay, so again, the course was reported at Berkeley High, but there is no assignment record here at Berkeley High. Okay, so that's essentially a CERT 47. You're telling me that the teacher was teaching at Berkeley High. However, I don't see a staff assignment record stating that the teacher is teaching at the school of assignment equal to Berkeley High. Okay, so now again, you have to ask the question, is the teacher really assigned to this class? If not, then make the necessary changes and upload to CalPADS. Maybe you assign a different seed number, okay, to the class. That way, it clears the error for the staff member. Now, if indeed the staff member should be reported at was reported to be teaching this class, then of course you have to submit or add a new assignment record here for that specific class. Or if you made a mistake of assigning them to Berkeley Unified, since the school of assignment is an operational key, a unique key that can be modified directly in CalPADS, your course of action is to delete the record and recreate the record and assign them to Berkeley High instead. Okay, so that's for CERT 47. So we also have some additional CERT errors here. So CERT 54 is stating that a course section includes a seed for which there is no demographic information. Okay, of course includes a seed for there is no demographic information. However, if you click on show and look at the staff member's information, it turns out the staff member has a seed, right? See, we have the course here. You have the assignment. So the course is here, the assignment is here. They are assigned at the correct school. However, CalPAD stating that you don't have a staff demographic record for the staff member that is valid. And however, you see a demographic record here. So what's the deal? So it all boils down to two things. One, the record effective start date, and of course, the employment start date, right? So for CERT 54, it's the record effective start date that it's where's that? So it says here, verify that the seed in the course section is valid. If not, then correct the seed. If the seed in the course section is valid, submit a staff demographic record with seed included in it. However, it boils down to, again, the record effective start date as well as the employment. So the question is, was the teacher employed on census day? If not, as obviously indicated here, then the course should be assigned to the teacher who was teaching the class on census day. This sometimes happens to between a newly hired regular teacher and a substitute teacher. So if there was a vacancy on census day, then by all means assign the seed to the substitute teacher who was teaching the class on census day. Now, if the teacher was indeed there on census day, then you have to modify the record start date and employment start date. Okay, so let's see if this can be modified in CalPADS. Nope, the record effective start date can be modified. So your only course of action is to add a new record with an effective start date earlier than census day or when um, the staff member started their employment in CalPADS prior to census day. Okay, so that's CERT 54. So yeah, if you are trying to remove the value on the effective end date to address CERT 84, then go to the demographic record, as I've mentioned earlier. So for CERT 54, two questions you have to ask. Was the staff member employed on census day? If not, then do not assign the staff member to the course for fall 2. You could assign them later on in end of year as the teacher assigned to the course. But for fall 2, since the staff member was not employed on census day, then do not assign them to the course. Report the substitute teacher instead. Okay, so that's CERT 54. CERT 79 is also a common error, and this normally occurs for staff members who may be itinerant staff members in CALP that you've reported that may require, of course, students in the class. Okay, so CERT 79 is just stating that there are no SCSE records or students rostered to a course section. Okay, so number one, if you have a regular class, then by all means submit the SCSE associated to that class, the roster of students. Now, there are scenarios where you really don't need to submit the SCSE roster of students. However, CalPads is dinging you for that scenario. So here is one example. You have here RSP 3-0605. Okay, so let's look at that. 50, 65. Okay, so we have here Nachi Giggles. And so Nachi is was reported to be a 12, a regular teacher assigned to an RSP class. Um, Essentially, this teacher is a special education teacher, and you wanted to report the teacher as an RSP 9231. So you're essentially, as I mentioned earlier, separating her course from maybe a team teaching class, or the teacher was indeed just an RS was teaching an RSP class. If this is the case and you're getting a CERT 79, the reason behind this is the job classification. It is important when you are reporting RSP teachers, itinerant teachers in band, that you intend to not report their SCSE course records associated to them. Always make sure that the job classification is a 12. So let's say if you have a teacher who is a band teacher who does push in pull out for elementary students, and you don't want to, of course, add all of those students in the course, always report those teachers as a 27 and itinerant and assign them to their course. Now, for this, I have to change their job classification to a 27. That way, I am not compelled or required to submit the SCSE records or the roster of students assigned to that class. Okay, so you just go to the staff assignments, and where's that? And change the, oh, you can't change it because since the job classification is a 12, so your only course of action is deleting this record and then adding a new record with the job classification of 27. Okay, so sometimes you also have, let's say, world language, right? World language. So we have here jalapeno. Jalapeno is assigned to Spanish world language, right? Semester 1. So, of course, if the staff member is teaching a regular Spanish class, then, and you want those students to be rostered in the class, then you submit the SCSE records. Okay. To determine if the class do not have SCSE records, you could go to here, to the online maintenance, and go to course data. Okay. So we have here Spanish, and then we have the student course section button on the right side here. Just and then world language 101. And then you have here the class, and it turns out there are no students rostered in the class. And so if you're just trying to resolve an error during deadline week for just a handful of course sections, you could just maybe add the students here rather than resubmitting an entire SCSE file for your school or for the district, and that might mess up your certification process again. So you can manually add the students here and assign the SSIDs to this course. So that's how to resolve CERT 79s. Now, also have our classic SCSE0139F2. This is what Nate was mentioning earlier about, if you don't follow the submission sequence, although it is not, we don't recommend that anymore. If you don't follow it, sometimes this essentially comes back with errors. So for SCSE139, so let's just click on the message ID here. It's just stating that, hey, you submitted an SCSE record for a student. However, we don't see the corresponding course section record. So you submitted the SCSE file for some students. However, the course section associated that you've listed in the SCSE record does not match to any of the existing course sections in the CALPADS ODS, either because you have not included the course section record in the file to begin with, or there are attributes that do not match those that don't match between those two existing course sections. So if the first is your scenario wherein the course sections were missing, you have to ask the question, were those courses supposed to be reported to begin with? Okay, so if this is triggered by, let's say, preschool students, I know last year we had this issue with some SIS where they included preschool students in the fall to reporting. It triggered an SCSE 139, and so for that error, um, please make sure that this time around do not include preschool students in your SCSE file. Otherwise, CalPAS will try to find the course section associated to that preschool. Okay. Okay. Now, if let's say you are submitting SCSE records for valid students, let's say in first grade, second grade, in high school, and you are um, and the course exists in CalPADS, you have to go to the course section. You have to compare the um, the values populated, the values identified in the error. So you have to look at the school course of delivery, academic year ID, local course ID, course section ID, and academic term code. Normally, this is where you guys fail the academic term code. Sometimes your CRSE would have an academic term code of full year, but on your SCSE, the academic term code is semester one. So this is or maybe or quarterly. Okay, so you have to make sure that if you see the course sections in CalPADS, compare the values between the values in these fields between the SCSE and the CRSE. Now, let's say you just want to make deletions to delete SCSE records. Before, we always recommend you go to the SCSE ODS extract and download the SCSE file, SCSE extract, and identify the records that you need to delete. So those are multiple steps. And however, Nate pointed out, and thanks to Nate, that if you go to the data discrepancy section, go to Fall 2, click on Apply Filters, and you have here your list of SCSE 139s, right? So instead of requesting a SILA ODS, SCSE ODS extract for a whole bunch for your entire school, you can just select this and then go to Data Discrepancy Error Extract and download the extract through this one. So the extract would be in the same format that your SCSE has. You just have to make sure that you add the D transaction type on the SCSE extract. So if you want more details on this, I believe it was included on the data discrepancy video that that's on the current YouTube channel. Okay, so you can use this as a file to submit your SCSE delete records if you're doing it through the batch file process. Now, if you're just doing it manually, so let's say you only have 5 errors anyway, so you have to resubmit a file that would wipe out the SCSE records. Okay. Yeah, that's for SCSE 139. If you want additional guidance on this, there is, let's see if there was a tutorial added here. Oh, we may add this one later on. I believe there are some tutorials in our CC's YouTube channel that might include an SCSE 139 video. Okay. Another one that potentially might be an issue this year, we have CRSE 0640F2. This could be a potential headache for you guys this year. Um, this error is just stating that if a class is intended to be a SPED class, which you identified using a special education strategy code of 700, then all of the students in the class should just be SPED students. Okay, so what this means is that you should only report a class with an instructional strategy code of special education if this class is intended for just SPED students. Okay, so let's look at what course was this. Let's go back to this one here. So should you have that error, which I don't have it here, but let's go to the course. All right, so let's just pretend we have here the um, the record. So this class, grade 3, full year. So essentially, this is a self-contained class. You're telling us that this class, the self-contained class, is specific to special education students, and so you flag this as a 700. If that is indeed true, then make sure that all of your students rostered in that class are SPED students, meaning you've submitted, there is an existing SWDS record, a plan, and more importantly, a NEET record associated to that student. If there are no NEET records, or if the student is not a SPED then you have to ask the question, why are we marking this as special education? Okay, so that again points us to our initial guidance in terms of how to report your RSP teachers. So if you have a scenario where you have a class that is a team teaching class, you report them as a 1000, and then you report them as a 700 because you have an RSP teacher team teaching, then this course 460 error will trigger for you. So it is important that you separately report the courses for those two teachers. Report the mainstream class where the students are just supposed to be receiving instruction as a self-contained 1000. Take out the instructional strategy of 700 to avoid that error. Now you have to report the teacher who is the RSP teacher in their own course and mark that as SPED 700. If that's the scenario. Now, if you have a special day class which involves all of the students being SPED students, then by all means report the class as 700. However, if you're getting a CRSE 460, then that means you may need to update the student's record to tell us that the student is a SPED student. So how is that? So let's go back here. So normally the error would include both the SSID or the course. Now, if you've ascertained that the course is indeed a SPED specific course, then go to the SSID and make sure that they have a meet record. Now, if the student does not have a meet record, then ask your SPED person to submit a meet record for that student. Okay. Looks like that error is also validating meet record for the SPED student. What if the meeting has not happened until after census day? Well, if when you say meeting, there should always be an initial meeting, right? Even if a pending occurs. So you have to consider that as well. Now, if you can't claim the student as a SPED student yet, because you never had that occurrence, then you have to consider the fact that the student may have not been SPED during that time on census day. So you
I
have to
think
remove the student from that class.
I feel like it would have said as of census day on the error
Hmm.
if it was
Yeah,
intended to have a meet. So I think you might just need a meet record. I remember
yeah.
being in questions about this last year, being in meetings and they were questioning it. And I think part of the complication was Brandy had relayed to us. Students are often put in these classes sometimes before they actually have their meeting, with the anticipation that they're going to be special ed. So I don't know that we're in a position to answer that definitively right now. It's a new era, but there is a Q&A at 3 o'clock with Alex, who's in all of the special education meetings, and Brandy and and Joe Tan. I think they could answer this question specifically at 3 o'clock.
You're stating that baseline record plan is all we are required to have in CalPAS when we acquire a new SPED student. Because I believe that that is not true. Because if you have a plan record, then the plan will look for a SWDS status record, and then if you have an SWDS status record, it will also look for a meet record. So
Yeah,
it creates a domino effect. So it
there will
all boils down to having a meet record.
there will always be a meet record. There's going to have to be an initial at some point. It doesn't mean it has to be your meet record. The
That's
student's
right.
history has to have a meet record.
Yeah. Okay, so that concludes the resolution process. And then, of course, once you've resolved all of your errors, we then go back and wait for a new snapshot. Once a snapshot clears, then, of course, this should show 0. And then you can now move on and review all of your aggregate reports. And, of course, supporting reports. Once you've ascertained that the reports are all accurate, you can check the box here which will appear after you've reviewed all of your aggregate reports. Check the box that you're signing your life away, telling us that your data is correct. And then the LA approve button will appear here. Once you click on that, you are officially certified for Fall 2. Okay. And also just remember, you're working in the CalPAS environment, so there is always a delay in terms of waiting for your CDDs to get corrected. So if you want to know if the work that you did on your CDD is cleared while waiting for the snapshot, always go to the data discrepancy section. The refresh cycle on the data discrepancy section is quicker. So it runs quicker than the snapshot certification. So if you made corrections, maybe come back in an hour or two, and those data discrepancies, assuming you've made the right corrections, then that should clear the errors here. And then you just have to anticipate and wait for the snapshots to pick up the changes in your DDs. Okay. And that's essentially a overview of error resolution and the certification process. I pass you on to Nate for the reports section.
Thank you, Kyron. Kyron kind of alluded to with the SCSE0139 error, that we had a video, and I'm glad he mentioned it because I forgot about it. And I put it in the chat, but here it is. And I think Marshall bookmarked it. So about 1721 in Module B, uh, there's the importing extract to Excel. And this is a demonstration of how you might resolve several SCSE 0139 errors. So you can see here, Marshall kind of gave us a bookmark of the different parts of the video.